Good afternoon, vascular people. First things first, let's get this out the way before I go any further. Do you like the new glasses? Not only are that looks sinister, doesn't it? It looks sinister with the reflection in. But what can I tell you? Not only are they very focal, there's also photochromic light. Photochromic lenses. So I end up, I look like an East German spy when I'm in the house, and they're all nice and clear. And then when I go out in the street and it's sunny, I start to look like Ray Charles because they go all dark. But I got a 2-for-1 offer on these glasses from Tesco, interestingly enough. You know, is this the way healthcare is going to go one day? You know, is Tesco going to take over? We're going to go to the dentist in Tesco soon. You know, already there's a pharmacy next door to the opticians. And I got to tell you, it was extraordinarily convenient and extraordinarily efficient. And I got 2-for-1. I got on a 2-for-1 deal. So there's my others. They don't look too different from the original ones, but how times change, eh? How times change, and of course, you know, since I last spoke, I think the whole health service has changed. I'm going to be back to that later on. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So, all in all, this week, it depends on where you look at it. For the vascular course, I've had an absolutely bumper week of correspondence. Largely, I've got to tell you, from one source. That is to say, from good old Martin, who never lets you down for a bit of interest and commentary. Smashing well done, Martin. I want to come back to some of the points you've made, individual points, in just a moment. But ladies, come on, letting the side down. You'd think feminism had never happened. The only people who've contributed this week are Dave and Martin. You know what I mean? It can't be right. Because next minute we'll be getting called all sorts of sexists for not letting you speak. I don't know. And Martin, if you get troubled by this, mate, if you get troubled by nobody else speaking, just imagine what it's like for me. You know, I've got to go on in a minute and make a couple of films here for 2 other courses that I run, right? Who, between the 2 courses, have handed in the way of discussion, absolutely nothing. Nothing for the whole week. And what are you going to say to that? It's not as though I don't take the mickey enough and say, I feel awful being sat. Right. One thing is I'm considering for future intakes. I'm going for what they call a minor modification. A minor modification in the course, and that is to say, you alter the course structure. You take it through like a mini revalidation. And what I'm considering is saying that it's part of the course, that you've got to participate in discussion. If you don't participate in discussion, you don't pass the course. I'm thinking of saying that. I don't want to say that really though, because you shouldn't be forced to give your opinion about anything. But what else do I do? How do I know anyone else? How do I know anyone's out there at the other end, ultimately? I mean, I do with the other course, because to get in touch with me other ways. But my point still remains, if I was to go and show this to my boss, how would I justify the fact that there was nothing coming back? There is on this course. Can't argue that. There is on this course. Right. Come on. Let's get down to business. So I get all these back on the discussion board, and I start them from the bottom and work up. So in a sense, you're looking at a sort of paleontology. You're looking at the oldest responses first, and then on them come newer and newer layers. So I'm going to be going back a little bit here now when we start off. I note in the first correspondence that you made this week, Martin, you counterposed in your head the idea of political leverage, the role of speciality, the role of specialism. I am a specialism. I think I said that one of the advantages of calling yourself a specialist nurse or specialist podiatrist is that it gives you a political leverage. And you said on the discussion board that you're not so much interested in political leadership as much as getting optimal health outcomes for your patients. Well, that assumes, surely, that assumes that both things are mutually exclusive. I mean, one of the reasons why you might want political leverage is precisely to get your patients a better deal, you know, and by banging the drum as a specialist, maybe that will make getting your patients a better deal more likely. You know, it's not all about ego. It's not all about sort of massaging professional egos here. It might be that that's the best way of giving your point of view the credibility it requires in order to get things moving. Perhaps that's it. Perhaps that's it. And you know, the way that I set this whole discussion up was is the notion of specialism inconsistent, or does it undermine the idea of holism and holistic care? Well, to be honest with you, I'm a bit sceptical about holistic care anyway. I never quite understood what the word holistic meant. Never quite understood it. And every time somebody attempts to define what holistic care is to me, it just strikes me as being so woolly and philosophically leaky that I don't believe in it much anyway, so giving that up as a claim wouldn't worry me in the slightest. You know, I think, right, I get the impression sometimes when people use the word holistic, it's just a redefinition of the word good, you know, built into the very structure of the world is the idea of good. You know, you can have good medical care and you can have bad medical care, but you can't have good holistic care and bad holistic care. Bad holistic care just seems to be a contradiction in terms, you know. And I always wonder about concepts where good and bad are kind of built in. You know, it doesn't leave you much room for thinking, really, does it? So one of the questions that Martin asks me back, you know, okay, I got this idea that holistic care, that the idea of specialism undermined the notion of holistic care. I got this idea when I went to France one time when I visited an intensive care unit in France, where in terms of post-registration courses, in terms of specialist courses, you can do operating theatre nursing as a course post-registration, or you can do children's nursing as a course post-registration. But you couldn't do like a 12-week course in cardiac care or, you know, tissue viability. You couldn't do one of those sorts of courses. And the reason for that was that he thought, I think he was making it up as he went along, frankly. I think that he was using this argument as a fig leaf to cover what he regarded as a weak spot in French education, French nurse education, certainly. But he said that he regarded this as repeating the mistakes that the Americans had made about over-specialisation. Okay, you know, okay. And Martin's question to me is, he wonders whether the French health service benefits as a result of this reluctance to take up specialism on the part of nurses. You know, whether the French National Health Service is benefits for this. Well, all I can tell you, Martin, from my own experience, is that if you ever get sick in France. You know, remarkable, absolutely remarkable, and remarkable on one main point, and that is access. You get immediate access to whatever it is that you need. You get, if you need it today, you'll be in hospital tomorrow. You know, it is instantaneous. Now, that's true for things that you need access for to get something done today. Much less good on community care, for instance, much less good on palliative care. Way behind us on palliative care. Although they were, 5, 6, 10 years ahead of us on primary angioplasty, for instance. You know, if you need an angioplasty in France, 20 minutes. and also in France, and again, I want to hit directly on the political issues. Although it was a brilliant service for access, and your GP could put you into hospital tomorrow for anything that you might need, its nature the nature of the French health service was very atomised. Nobody knew what anyone else was doing. Nobody knew in one hospital what they were doing up the road. But Britain, on the other hand, we have this glorious, unified, integrated system, which is, and one of the things that the current changes, in my view, are going to compromise is that holistic, to use a word I don't normally approve of, that unified system of care where all the bits, to one extent or another, fit in with each other. Okay, now then, next point that Martin makes, let's put that to one side, that issue of specialism and all that. The next thing that Martin wants to raise is the question of competencies for palpating people's aneurysms. And he's keen to press the notion of competency among podiatrists to get podiatrists used to the notion of competently palpating people's abdomens to pick up any odd aneurysm. And he puts up there for us the communication from a professor of vascular surgery disagreeing with this. Well, to be honest with you, Martin, as I'm reading through, this is what you were proposing to show us all. I thought that there was going to be considerably more vitriol in the professor's point of view. And I was rather surprised, actually, at the conciliatory tone of it, at the thoughtful, and I thought it was going to be I thought it was going to be a case of who the hell do you think you are saying that? But no, that wasn't his approach, was it? His approach was more very reflective and very, where would this lead? And I had some sympathy for his views, to be honest with you. One thing I would suggest, Martin, is read the community. I've put up there screening, a book about screening, and it's a book by Peter Skrabanek, yeah. And have a little look and read in the chapter 4 about screening. He makes some very interesting and sometimes very amusing points about screening, which I've kind of allowed to influence me a bit down the years. But one of the things that I took from the professor's point of view is that he was saying, look, it's not just a matter of feeling the person's abdomen, of feeling for a thing, yeah. That's kind of straightforward, but it's all the other issues that surround it. The fact of the matter is that if you say, I can't feel an aneurysm in your abdomen, by and large, the general public think, that's it, I've had my MOT, passed. But of course, the position might be a damn sight more complicated than that, as you rightly know. Right, next point. Pain from claudication. Yes, indeed, Dave. Absolutely, Dave. Wasn't Eddie impressive? And Eddie's got a real track record here, It's not just in claudicating patients that he gets involved in all this stuff. But he was also a member of a as I say in the broadcast there, of a award-winning service over in Birkenhead, and that wasn't for claudicants. That was for people with just recovering from myocardial infarction and also heart failure. And he's a really committed sort of individual. He works over in Salford, Martin. You might come across him. He's a great bloke. And the point you make, Martin makes the point on the discussion board, which you can go and see for yourself. Martin makes the point that he's slightly uncertain about, collateral circulation and how it builds up. And that's probably true. Probably true. I don't know. I mean, it is a mystery, isn't it? How these blood vessels recreate themselves. But it's always been my experience, Martin, that if you ask a coronary care nurse, for instance, who would you look at? Or would you rather have the message is coming in? Is it a 75-year-old bloke who's got an MI with a track record of 10 years angina? Or is it a 45-year-old man with no history whatsoever of angina coming in with his first MI? And mostly, coronary care nurses will say, I'd prefer the older bloke. And the reason for that is the more likelihood in the older man that there's already a collateral circulation built up, so that even if the artery clogs off acutely and completely, there's still some blood supply likely, whereas in the 45-year-old, if they block off all of a sudden, and, there's a possibility that there could be good night Vienna for them. And I've always been struck by that. There's something I want you to say. There's something I want you to consider here. Is there a role when we're talking about claudication, and is there a role when we're talking about pain? For cognitive behavioural therapy, that is to say, don't look at your pain as being the enemy. Look at your pain as being your leg's way of saying, I need help. I'm building up new blood supply to muscle that's going without. Slow down a little bit. I need a little bit more time to get on with my business here, rather than, oh my God, I've got a ticking time bomb in my leg. Next minute, this is all going to go crazy, and this pain is the worst thing that could possibly ever have happened. I on my heart failure course, my face-to-face heart failure course, I get someone to come in and talk about cognitive behavioural therapy and heart failure, and it always goes down well. Perhaps there's a role in this course for getting someone to talk about CBT and claudicants. Perhaps, yeah. I'll have to see what's written on the subject first, I suppose. Martin makes some very good points as well about the lack of evidence of Dave raised the problem on the discussion board. If you exercise a limb that's going without blood, is there any possibility that the calcified plaque, will break off, disappear down the artery, and before you know it, you've got an acute ischemic episode underway? Is there any track record for that? And Martin rightly points out that in terms of a solid evidence base for that idea, pretty thin, pretty thin evidence base. Whereas the problem of not exercising a limb, I would have thought, is pretty obvious. Just letting a limb dangle off the couch and die off on you. I would have thought that a theoretical, possible, not a lot of evidence for, but who knows, the danger of a plaque breaking off is one thing, but leaving your leg without any exercise, on the other hand, whole other enchilada, as they say in America. The point is made there that in the 1980s, I think it was, that all right, there is a theoretical risk from exercise because every now and again you hear about some super duper athlete losing their life, collapsing because of a sudden cardiac death situation. Well, okay, fair enough, but certainly for the 80s athletes, I wonder to what extent that was because of the exercise and to what extent it was to do with performance enhancing drugs. And even when you hear of a footballer, for instance, collapsing, it's not because a plaque has broken off and drifted down the arterial bed in the person's heart. It's because they've had an arrhythmia. Don't put yourself down, Martin. Don't put yourself down. A hypertensive couch potato, Martin, you'd have to be a pretty committed couch potato to beat me in that department, and I'm supposed to be the teacher on these courses. you know, and I've got clinical history. Try that. Last thing. Again, I'm only speaking to Martin here, and to a lesser extent, Dave. All you lady wallflowers standing on the edge of the dance floor, looking at your dance cards. Martin mentions the possibility of developing lower limb vascular assessment clinics. Now, I'm going to say this to you, but it goes against almost everything I believe in terms of politics. I know somebody who works in a cardiovascular related service dealing with people in the community. Him and the people who work with him are sick and tired of having their objectives changed, they're being jerked around, getting extra jobs thrown at them, blah, blah, blah. So what they are considering doing, Martin, considering doing, is given the new changes in the National Health Service, putting a bid in for the patients that they see, and seeing if they can't get to the point where they can give the service they want to the patients they care for without any top-down interference. Now, this goes against my ethos of the holistic, whole system, integrated approach, and it represents a compromise to the notion that this should be in-house National Health Service stuff. But on the other hand, it is the modern world, and perhaps, you know, a service of this nature would be better off being provided by people who are committed to the idea, rather than someone coming in from Virgin whose main loyalty is to the shareholders. I'm just going to throw that one in and see, you know, this is the modern age that we live in. You know, does that idea stack up? So look, I'm getting conscious of the time now. There's 22 minutes. This is the longest so-called broadcast I've ever done to any group, right? And that's largely because of the points raised by Martin, and to a lesser extent Dave. So next week, you ladies. Otherwise, start sending me your drafts. I need to see them pretty soon, because the submission date is approaching all too fast. Speak to you next week, unless I have any reason to get in touch with you before. Bye now.